Apologetics Seminar that we've done. This presentation's sort of a modified version of what we've done in the past, but we're doing this for apologetics reasons because people need to know the truth. They need to know the truth about what's happening.
I thought you were going to apologise.
I'm not apologising. I'm going to be they should call it unapologetics. We're going to coin a new term, unapologetics. So the idea of tonight's presentation is just to go through, we're going to start with a short one on Islam, because Islam's, I believe, is one of the biggest threats, especially how Islam's teaming up with Marxism. And then we're going to go through some beautiful things in our history that have sort of, they're just missing in our vernacular now. And I think often when we speak to people in the city, because we do a lot of debating in the city with all sorts of people, because we put controversial signs out where we challenge the Quran, we'll have an A-frame there and it attracts attention. And often when I talk to people about the abolishment of slavery by the British, what separation of church and state really means, many people don't know this and they become quite inspired by it. So, and then it switches on their conspiratorial mind because you share some of this amazing information and then people say, how do I not know this? And I go, yeah, well that's a question to think about, isn't it? The fact that you never learned about any of these things in school. You never learned what the flag meant, the history of it, the history of equality, where that came from and where our values really come from. And I think that's the reason why I think that's directly where the identity crisis that we have in the West stems from. It's the removal of our history. So people just don't know. But anyway, we're going to start with Ben's going to give us a short presentation about Islam. And for those that don't know, this is Ben. This is my partner I don't know if I should say partner in crime, but it might become a crime to do what we're doing in the future. And that'll make it even more fun to do it as well. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Ben.
Hey guys, thanks for coming out tonight. I'll start by saying this is a bit of a disclaimer. I'm no historian, I'm no scholar, so to speak, but about 33 years ago I met my now wife. She was a Muslim and I was a Christian. And that started my foray into Islamic and Christian apologetics. So I had to learn 33 years ago how to, make an apology for Christianity. And we argued for a bit on and off and started seeing each other in secret because her parents were Muslim. And by the grace of God, she became a Christian, thank God for that. But about 9.5 years. If you want to know the full story, it's at Christian Warrior Project YouTube channel if you want to hear the testimony. But about 9.5 years after we met, she found herself in Macedonia at the mercy of being married off to an arranged marriage. I went to Macedonia, rescued her, came back. Within an hour, her brother was at the front door and he goes, you're very lucky because I could have been here and we could have made some problems. But we're going to disown her. We don't want to know anything about her. So that's pretty much it. That's what really got me deep into understanding the theology of Islam. So look, we'll start, basically 2,000 years ago we had the death and resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ, and he gave the commission to go into all the world and preach the good news. Go into all the world and preach the good news, preach the gospel. Jesus, you had people like Peter, Paul, went to Rome, Asia Minor, Thomas to India, Mark to Egypt, Andrew to Scotland, Greece and Scythia, which is modern Ukraine, South Russia, and others to Persia, Ethiopia and so on. We had a beautiful, blissful 400 years of Christianity that was propagating very quickly because freedom, love, the sacrifice, the story of the gospel was something very attractive that people wanted and they loved and they received it and they accepted it straight away. Then Muhammad comes on the scene, 610, and he came preaching a very compromised gospel. So, not gospel, but it was very compromised. He was saying, to you, your religion, to me, mine. Invite people with wisdom. But here's the one that really is really pretty crazy. Quran 6:20, 2:62. Indeed, the believers, Jews, Christians, and Sabians, whoever truly believes in God and the last day and does good, will have their reward with the Lord, and there will be no fear for them, nor will they grieve. This is Muhammad saying that Christians, Jews, and nobody knows who the Sabians are, but apparently they were like a different sect of Christianity. They will go to heaven. And that's what happened during the Mecca stage of his first prophethood, so to speak. It was a very soft, trying to get as many people as possible. That happened for about 13 years. When he went to Medina, he started becoming more of a warlord. And, funnily enough, it just changes. 385. And whoever desires other than Islam as a religion, never will it be accepted from him, and he, in the hereafter, will be among the losers. So Muhammad's teaching and preaching changes from one that's of peace to one that's of an attack, because he started becoming more and more popular, and he started putting his foot down. Then there was a big battle called the Battle of Badr. So the Battle of Badr, there was about 313 Muslims. They were poorly equipped, and they overthrew about 1,000 Quraysh. Now these guys, in all honesty, they didn't really want to fight him, so they lost about 70 men and ran. They didn't want to have nothing to do with it. It just so happens that at the Battle of Uhud, which happened about a year later, Muhammad nearly lost his life, because the Meccans came for revenge after that Battle of Badr, and he lost 2 teeth. He had his helmet cracked over his head. He nearly lost his life, but anyway, he keeps saying that the Lord was with him, and he nearly died that next year. So because of what happened at the Battle of Badr, we had the doctrine of jihad. So Muhammad really understood at that time, for him to get his way, he had to basically launch jihad, basically force people into servitude. So you see verses coming down to him where he'll be saying things like, fight those who, fight until they submit and pay the jizya or are conquered, and what would happen, this is the most important thing I want you guys to understand, is that Muhammad closed off the main mosque that was there near the Kaaba. He closed it off to all the polytheists. And what happened because of that, they stopped getting money from all the immigrants and all the people that were coming in and, bowing to, serving at the mosque. And because of that, Muhammad made a rule, and he said, give me a sec, I'll show you. Muhammad made a rule. And he basically said, don't worry, you won't go broke as long as you start attacking the polytheists. You're going to be making money by attacking the polytheists and getting booty. So now it was a survival thing. It was no longer, you need to join my religion or whatever. Now it's survival. Now we have to attack so we can survive, so we can get the booty. A very, very interesting thing that happened with Muhammad, I don't know if too many people know this, but Muhammad basically thought that he was going to rise again. He gave a command, he said, verily Allah has forbidden the earth to consume the bodies of the prophets. And because of this, his companions thought he's going to rise from the dead like Jesus, right? But what happened was, when he died, they left his body in Aisha's room, and it was just rotting away for about 3 days. So during these 3 days, everybody was arguing to who the next successor was going to be. And this is where you see the difference between Sunni and Shia. So at that time, it was like, because Muhammad died, it was like, who's going to take over from Muhammad? the caliphate, which was the leaders, it's kind of like, the Pope choosing the next successor or whatever else. The caliphate were like, no, it's going to be Abu Bakr. And the Shia Muslims, they were saying, no, it's going to be Ali, which is his nephew. So the thing was, there was a big argument, but because his body was rotten, it started stinking. And eventually, Al-Abbas, he eventually urged people, bury your companion, for he has already begun to smell. I mean, literally in Arabic, it actually says stinks, but they've watered it down here. Because of that, many people lost their faith. Now, a lot of the Muslims were like, actually, this guy didn't raise from the dead like he said he would. And because of that, the very, very first war was the Ridda War, which is nicknamed, it's called the Ridda War, but it's actually called the War of the Apostates. During that war, it was estimated between 10 and 20,000 people that were slaughtered that were trying to leave Islam. It was a brutal show of force where Abu Bakr took over, and he's like, no, I'm going to take over with an iron fist and I'm going to make sure people comply. Now, a very important thing as well, Muslims will tell you that Islam means to submit, and they'll say it's to submit to Allah. No, it's to submit to Muhammad. It's that simple. The very, very first verses in the Quran was La ilaha illallah. There is no God but Allah, right? But later on, when he went to Medina, so during the Medina stage, it changed to La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. So there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger, right? So it wasn't just now, everybody needs to. You're a polytheist, you can't serve multiple gods, there's just only one God but Allah. No, now it's, you need to say that you submit to me, Muhammad. And it wasn't something that had to be meant from the heart, as long as you just said it. If you just said it, you're a Muslim now. And this is the interesting thing, Quran 41:14. And the Bedouins say, we have believed. Say, you have not believed, but say, instead, we have submitted. For faith has not yet entered your hearts. That's completely contrary to Christianity. We have to believe if you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. The stark contrast is, with us, there has to be a personal relationship. With Muhammad, he just wanted people to submit. That was it. And when Muslims will tell you it means to submit to Allah, it means to submit to Allah and his messenger. That's it. Or in, like a place in Iran or something, to Allah and the current caliph. That's it. So Muhammad will run around, subjugate everybody, and then bribe everyone with fake promises of heaven. Everybody would have heard the lovely promises of swelling breasts and full-breasted women in heaven. I mean, I ask Muslims all the time, I go, this is the eternal word of Allah. Now, the one thing you guys got to remember is the Quran was written on tablets from eternity. They're uncreated. They were written on tablets. So before creation, before anything else, on some tablet for Allah there was written, you'll get swelling breasts. Think about that. Think about it. Does that make sense, brother? Yeah, there you go. So you can see here that there was always promised sexual slavery, multiple clear verses allowing owners full sexual rights. Muhammad owned many slaves, and Muhammad, in one instance, traded 2 black slaves for 1 white slave. He was clearly a very racist man. And this is the truth, because there are some hadiths that would say that if anybody says that Muhammad was black, you could be put to death. I should have written down this hadith for you. Now, this is another very important thing. The messenger of Allah said, the martyr has 6 things with Allah. He is forgiven from the first drop of his blood. He is shown his place in paradise. is protected from the punishment of the grave. Punishment of the grave, let me tell you what it is. Because, I know you're not going to believe me, man, but at the end of the day, because of urine, so to speak, when people die and they're not Muslim, they go in the grave, and when you're in the grave, angels come and hit you with hammers and torture you until the day of resurrection. Now, if you're a claustrophobic, that's in Islam, man, I'm telling you. I know it sounds like I'm making it up, right, but I'm telling you, it's the craziest thing. So you're going to be punished and tormented in like this claustrophobic, right, casket until the day of resurrection comes, right? So people are petrified of this. They're losing their minds. They don't want to go to the grave, right? Punishment of the grave. He's secured from the greatest terror. A crown of dignity is placed upon his head, of which one ruby is better than this world and what is in it. Doesn't matter if you guys like rubies or not, you're going to get it, okay? I don't care for rubies. Anyway, and he's married to 72 wives from among the wide-eyed houris. He's granted intercession for 70 of his relatives. Do you see what he says there? It's very important. This is why you see the women in Palestine sending their children off to die. Because now you have somebody interceding for 70 of your family members. Not only does this guy get to dodge the punishment of the grave, not only does he get to dodge everything else, he gets to intercede for 70 of his relatives. So this is very important. That's why you would see during certain jihadi activities, the jihadists will go to the bar, get drunk, or go to a strip bar or whatever else, because when he gets to Jannah, he's fine. Everything's forgiven. Okay. So you have the forced taxation, the jizya system. Everybody who is not a Muslim is forced to pay a tax. It's just the way it is. And the reason being is because now you don't have to fight in the war or whatever. But the jizya system is not just for taxation, it's to degrade you, it's to demoralise you. There's places in the Quran where it says, in the Hadith where it says, when you meet a Christian, push him to the greater side of the road. Christians in the past were forced to wear oversized crosses or ride backwards on their donkeys. It was a way of humiliating people that wouldn't accept Islam. The very, very important thing is there's two Islamic theologies where Islam is in a particular state, in a particular region or country. It's always Dar al-Islam, which is the House of Islam, which means that this particular country or continent is under Islam. The other one is Dar al-Harab, which is a house of war. You're not a Muslim, we are your enemy. And there's nothing you can do about it. And if there's any sort of peace or anything like that, it's basically just to kind of like lure you into a false sense of peace until the numbers build up. And then it's their duty, according to their religion, to take over. That's why you see, I don't know if you guys seen Sneeko the other day, if anybody knows Sneeko. He was saying, we're going to take over America, you know. This is ours, this is what we're going to do. And then Elon Musk had to go on him and he told Elon Musk to go back to South Africa or something, you know. But that's the thing, this is baked into the religion. Misogynistic. Women are forced to cover. One thing that a lot of people don't know is that women are forced to cover because, it says here, and tell the believing women to reduce some of their vision. What he actually said was, he'll pull his garment over one of the eyes. There are countries now, especially in Afghanistan, you'll see them covered and just have like one eye visible. So everything's got to be covered except one eye. And their vision, and guard their private parts and not expose their adornment. This is how a woman should cover herself. And it says here, and tell the believing woman to reduce some of their vision and guard their private parts and not expose their adornment. Now, a prophet tell you, wives and your daughters, to bring down and their outer garments. Now, I missed that verse, but there's one particular verse that says they need to be dressed in a hijab so you can tell the difference between a believing woman and a slave. The difference is very clear. A believing woman is covered, a slave doesn't cover up. And a slave, because she's not covering up, is fair game. Why? Because whoever your right hand possesses is your slave. So when they talk about, seeing white girls in the UK or wherever it is in America that are being abused, this is absolutely halal, because it goes exactly according to the Islamic jurisprudence. I won't go deep into the different wars and everything that happened, but basically Islam started. You had the Islamic conquest, you had Christians resisting. Where is it? Muslim armies reached deep into France, but a champion by the name of Charles Martel, called nicknamed the Hammer, he stopped them, and he's like really the start of putting a face on what Christianity is. He's like the grandfather of Charlemagne. Continue to fight. You can see here, one thing I'd like to point out, you had Christian pushback with the First Crusade, and then you had, here we go. So with the Reconquista, if you guys ever want to be entertained, read about the Reconquista. These guys, they fought diligently for 800 years to take back their land. The First Crusade, this is very important, it was literally birthed out of a will after 400 years of continuous abuse by the Muslims. Christians in the Holy Land had endured heavy jizya taxes, severe restriction on worship, destruction of churches. If your church was damaged or there was a problem, you couldn't repair it under Sharia law. Brutal persecution under Islamic rule. Then you had many were kidnapped, sold into slavery. Slavery was the biggest problem. The one thing I want you guys to take away from this is that many of the Crusaders gave up massive, we're talking a lot of them went broke because they sold off their land, they sold off their homes, their castles, so they could fund the Crusades. The Crusades were very expensive. When the Pope said, Deus, Lord wills it, but it was his way of saying, okay, let's go, God wills it, we need to protect these people. But a lot of the people were just peasants, just squires, and the Pope basically promised them eternal life if they go. If they go and fight in the Crusades, they'll have eternal life. But there were a lot of people like Godfrey of Bouillon. He's the one that eventually overthrew Jerusalem. But he did it at a massive cost. To fund the expedition, serve God, they left behind wealth, security for a dangerous journey to liberate the Holy Land. We have the military timeline. One second, there's one I really wanted to show you. No, this one here. So with the, we have the continuous attacks from the Muslims from the 1100 all the way up until 1815 when we had the Barbary Wars. The slave trade during that time was so bad. It was so bad. This is one particular account. 1551, Targat Reis enslaved almost the entire island of Gozo, and in 1554 enslaved 4,000 to 6,000 from the Italian coastal town of Trieste. All remaining were beheaded, estimated at 5,000. Why? Because they wouldn't fit on the ship. So instead of leaving them behind, instead of leaving them live their lives, he just beheaded them. That's halal, because they're infidels, of which I'm very proud of being one. Battle of Lepanto. I didn't believe this, and I thought that it might be like exaggerated, but there was a battle on the open ocean where the Christian fleet went into a cross formation, a crucifix formation, and the Muslim fleet went into a crescent moon formation. The Christian fleet destroyed 200 to 300 Ottoman galleries, while they only suffered a loss of 15 to 20. That's not good, man. I love it. So, in the Barbary Wars, it was America came, once they won their independence, the UK was continuously spending money and sending jizya. They were sending money so they would be left untouched. Once America got their freedom and, they started getting attacked, they went back to the UK and they said, oh, look, can you guys do a bit of a deal to protect us? And they're like, no, you're on your own. So they kept getting attacked until Thomas Jefferson was elected on that sole premise that they wouldn't be spending money anymore. They were spending in the vicinity of about 2% of their GDP to be able to be left untouched by the Barbary pirates. Protection money, yeah. And he said, Jefferson boldly declared he would not pay 1 cent tribute anymore. This led to the First and Second Barbary Wars. The Ottoman advance also, I'm from Romania. Romania is modern day Wallachia. This is probably the first time you hear this, but Vlad the Impaler, which Count Dracula is based on, was actually a Christian, right? And he was an Eastern Orthodox Christian, and he kept the Ottomans at bay with mainly guerrilla tactics. He would go in and attack the camp while they were sleeping with small, battalions of horsemen, and he kept them at bay. But in the end, he died probably about 3 or 4 years after. But I thank Vlad the Impaler, because I don't want to be someone like him. Anyway, the Islamic slave trade. Estimate ranges from tens of millions to over 100 million slaves. The slave trade in Islam is, because it's backed up by religion, it was so well executed, it was very well, it was meticulous and very well defined. They had values for different people. If you were an older, if you were a young boy, if you were a young girl, if you're white, these people will fetch particular sums of money. It was so well crafted by the 14 to 1600s. It's so much more than what the transatlantic comparison was. And all those people were brought over to work in the plantations in America. I'm not saying it's right. At the end of the day, it's not right. Nobody should steal a man. But the thing is, it's, compared to what Islam had for the whole world and what it still have for the whole world, if Christians didn't rise up, if there wasn't any pushback, we'll be in big trouble. Now, the Golden Age myth is a lot of people and a lot of scholars will say that Islam went through this Golden Age, but a lot of it was just stolen because they'll take over, Constantinople and a lot of other places. They inherited a lot of the technology. There's one very important thing here. Look at this, Islam. There's a fatwa on studying philosophy and certain sciences. Think about it.
What's a fatwa?
So a fatwa is a law, an Islamic law, that prohibits you from doing something, right? So you are not allowed to learn philosophy and certain sciences. They call it innovation.
Bit like Galileo.
That's right. So the thing is, studying philosophy, logic, and certain foreign sciences is prohibited. Haram. Or strongly discouraged because they lead to doubt, deviation, and bid'ah. There's a Islamic verse in the Quran that says, don't ask too many questions because there's people that ask questions before you and they left Islam. Think about that. Turn off your brain, don't think about it, just accept, just submit, just shut up you know. Yeah, no kidding. This is a product. This is why we are in the best time of history, because we can look back at all the ideologies that have come before us, and we can see the product of that ideology. And we can see that the only ideology is Christendom. That makes sense. Nobel Prize winners in science, physics, chemistry, medicine, by religious background. 62% of all Nobel Prize winners were Christians, of which 31% of the world. Jews are 0.2% of the world, yet they have 25%. Non-Jewish, non-Christian, where is it here? Is the rest of the population, but they got 11%. You got Muslims, 25%, and they actually only have between 2 and 4. And out of the 4, I think only 2 of those Nobel Prize winners studied in purely Islamic countries. So the other 2 studied in Western countries. Harvard, with 400,000 alumni, has produced more high-impact graduates in the entire Muslim world in many scientific fields. The difference between the Bible and the Quran, 40 different authors, 66 books, 1,500 years of span. The Old Testament is completely justified by the Dead Sea Scrolls. New Testament, over 5,800 Greek manuscripts. The thing about the Quran is, when the Quran started being put together, because a lot of the people were dying in war, a lot of the people that were actually memorising the Quran, they were dying in war, so they had to get it down on paper. And in the end, what happened was, there's a guy by the name of Uthman who said, look, he had to make a decision, which is the right one, which is the wrong one, which are the right manuscripts, which are the wrong ones. And there was a lot of fighting, there was a lot of killing, there was a lot of wars because of that, and in the end he standardised it. So it's not the word of Allah, it's the word of Uthman, and what he decided is going to go in it. And in the end, the one that's the most used is the one that's recited by Hafs. Hafs is a late 8th century, was narrated by a transmitter, Hafs, and many of the old school Muslim scholars regard him as a liar. So a lot of his hadiths are considered untrustworthy because they considered Hafs as untrustworthy. So to reiterate, Islam means to submit. It means submit to Allah, but now it's La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. I'm not a Muslim because I don't mean it with my heart. So when I say the Shahada, it means nothing, right? But it's to submit to Allah. It's very, very clear. It's not about God. It's not about anything. Muhammad had an agenda, and people had to pledge their allegiance to him. Jizya is enforced, and it will continue to be enforced. Why? Because it's a way to make all of us into dhimmis. You're a second-class citizen. You're not good. In Islam, it always talks about being amongst the winners or the losers. Where Christ asks us to lose everything for him. Right? He says, you want to be a winner, be a Muslim. You're bribed with sexual immorality, bribed with all types of riches. You're bribed with a couch in the heaven of Allah. I don't know, I see him on hard rubbish every now and then. Right? You're bribed with a green silk shirt. Personally, I don't like wearing silk, but you're going to get it anyway. And women are forced to cover up. Why? Because in Islam, men aren't expected to have any self-control. In Christianity, you're expected to show self-control, be pure, just like Jesus was pure. He was pure, right? Muhammad couldn't keep his hands off anyone, and in the end, he portrayed that on everybody else. Well, if I can't do it, nobody else is going to do it. Islam demands outward submission, rewards jihad with carnal paradise, enforces jizya tax and death for apostates, divides the world into Dal al-Harab, and imposes strict hijab slavery on women. That's the end.
just to sum up, I just want to sum up in my words. So effectively, Islam brings taxation to non-Muslims. Islam brings its own version of a caste system. So you've got the Muslims, Muslim men, Muslim women, people who are the dhimmi slaves, which are the ones paying the tax. Below that you've got the polytheists and the infidels, and then you've got, actually the infidels aren't paying any money, any jizya tax. Then below that you've got the Muslims who have left Islam, who are now apostates, they're the very bottom. So that's the structure, the hierarchical structure of Islam. And that's what we have in our country now, in the West, and we should have no tolerance for it. It's not here to coexist with us, it's here to change us and turn us into a third world hellhole. So anyway, thanks for that, Ben, I appreciate that. So Christian theology, Western history and cultural identity. So today we're just going to be talking about, I'm going to go through just basic things that most of you have probably heard of, and maybe some things that you've probably never heard of. But if you have, it's a good refresher so that you can have it reiterated in your mind, because it's really important stuff that we need to know, because we have an identity crisis in this country. I don't know if you guys have noticed a bit of an identity crisis. You see these people with their LGBT flags or whatever in the city, and they just have no idea. Equality now. And they don't realise actually what equality means and where it comes from. And they hate Christianity, they'll protest Christianity, and protest the West, like the evil Western colonisers, and they're using this right called protesting, which came from Christianity, the very thing they're protesting against. So we'll go through it. Hopefully you get something out of it. I just point that there, don't I? It just works from here. Or should I just use this one?
You can use
Oh, there we go. It's all good. So we're going to start real basics, okay? Union Jack. Now that's on our flag. It's probably one of the most well-recognisable Christian symbols that we have. You've got St George's Cross. Who knows who St George is? Yes, that's right. We've got a great big statue of him at the State Library. And that's why we often go to do debating with Muslims and lefties at the State Library. And it's great because we can point to if they ever say, we're not a Christian country, and I go, well, see those statues over there? There's one of St George slaying the dragon, there's one of Joan of Arc. Great big statues, and they're beautiful. So St George, actually, interesting side note with St George's, while we're talking about St George, I asked AI about the country of Georgia, and I showed my oldest son Eli about this. I asked AI, where does the name Georgia come from the country of Georgia? And it said, AI comes back and says, it comes from the word ger, from some Persian language which means land of wolves. And then I talked to my son, I said, this is what AI is saying. Do you believe that? He says, no, because he's pretty smart, my oldest boy. And I said, what do you think George is named after? He goes, George? I said, yeah, it's interesting. That do you know what flag is the flag of the country of Georgia? St George's Cross. Right, so then I went back into AI and it said, oh, that's just a theory that it's named after the St George. It's staunchly Christian, it's got 80% Christian still now. And they have the St George's Cross, and the country's name is Georgia. But you ask AI, no. It's named after a word from a different language to the language they speak, which means land of wolves. It doesn't even sound like Georgia. So we've also got St Patrick's Cross. He's the one that spread the gospel throughout Ireland, and there's heaps of records in the archives about this guy, legends about this guy, St Patrick. But this one, St Andrew's Cross, is my favourite. Who knows who St Andrew is?
Used to live in his street.
Used to live in his street. Gee, you're a couple of thousand years old then. So St Andrew was one of the first disciples. So Peter, the disciple of Jesus, his brother, one of the first of the 12 disciples. And this is another one. because I asked AI, I said, where did the disciple Andrew share the gospel? And it says, Scythia, Greece, a couple of other places. I said, what about Scotland? It says, no, there's no evidence in the archives of... Because I asked if there was any evidence in the Scottish archives about Andrew's, the disciple of Jesus, preaching the gospel to the Scottish people. And it says, no, nothing exists. So I asked AI again, can you please read the Scottish Declaration of Independence? And in the Scottish Declaration of Independence, or the Declaration of Our Growth from 1320, this was, I believe, it was commissioned by Robert the Bruce. I don't know if anyone knows who he is.
Yes.
Yeah. If you've seen the movie Braveheart, I say that younger people haven't seen it, but it's a great movie. I actually found that I was related to him off my great-grandmother's line, direct line. I thought, oh, that's fantastic. And I thought, wow. And then I saw these evil kings as well. And I went, oh, okay. But this is what the Scottish Declaration of Independence says. This was originally written in Latin. They still have this document. It still exists, the original. The high qualities and deserts of these people, and this is obviously translated into English from Latin, were they not otherwise manifest, gained glory enough from this, that the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, our Lord Jesus Christ, after his passion and resurrection, called them, even though settled in the utmost parts of the earth, almost the first to his most holy faith. Nor would we have here then confirmed in that faith by merely anyone, but by the first of his apostles, by calling those second or third in rank, the most gentle St. Andrew, the blessed Peter's brother, and desired him to keep them under his protection as their patron forever. So I asked AI to read this document, and then it said, oh, I'm very sorry, I missed that. Right? So you can see there's this massive bias against anything Christian, which is Western. And the reason I'm going, you can't teach Western history and our culture without touching on Christianity. It's impossible. If you just can't do it. It is literally impossible because you're omitting everything. You're omitting where all of our values come from: equality before the law, the right to a fair trial, the right to be heard, why we have public servants. All of this comes from Christianity, the separation of church and state. So anyway, we actually have on our flag the Union Jack, which has 3 Christian crosses, one of which is attributed to St. Andrew, who was one of the disciples, who's a lot of Scottish people in this country. Perth is named after Perth in Scotland. I have a Scottish surname, but I have a big mix in there. But there's a lot of Scottish people, but we have this amazing Christian history on our flag, yet hardly anybody knows this. And I remember when I first brought this up with a guy named R.V. Menny, where we were doing a rally against it was one of the councils up on the peninsula. They were going to remove the Australian flag. So I spoke about doing this rally, and I said, and I explained what the Union Jack represents. And I spoke to him afterwards, and I said, did you know that? He said, I've never heard that before. Isn't that amazing? Like, we're not learning anything. We're learning about every other culture, though, but we're not learning about our own. Our Constitution starts with the words in its preamble, which outlines the actual reason for its existence, which is the highest law of our land, humbly relying upon the blessings of Almighty God. And you know what God it is? Well, you know what God it isn't? It isn't the Muslim one, okay? It's the Christian one. So, more evidence that we're a Christian heritage. And then you've got our Parliament, House of Reps, the Senate. Every single day they say the Lord's Prayer. And guess who's trying to get rid of it? Greens, yeah, they want to get rid of it. And I think Labor, if they could, they would as well. And it's important that because once we lose these traditions, we actually lose that connection to to our whole history. I mean, so the Lord's Prayer was well, most of us would know the prayer. It was Jesus. And actually, I think the next slide, it's not the next one, anyway. But the reason we have this idea of public servants is because that's what Jesus taught. That's why we have it in our society. That he was great, be your servant. The Son of Man came not to rule and reign, I think it says, but to serve And this is where we get this idea from, that the people in the parliament, they're meant to serve us. The greatest is meant to be the servant. That's Christian. Now, the reason I brought this up, secular, the meaning of secular, is because we were actually doing some debating in the city with these. I was this one particular leftist woman, and she was really proud of herself because she was really well educated. She thought she was anyway, until we had a discussion. And she found out that a lot of what she thought, I could shoot holes in it because it was wrong. And she was very, very, I'd say, indoctrinated to the Marxist cult. She kept calling me a white person. You're a white person. I'm brown. You see the world through a masculine white person's lens, and I'm like, well, I'm just trying to look through the correct lens. And she said, we're not a Christian country because we're a secular country. That was one of her defences to what I was presenting. And the reason we were in the city actually was because we had an A-frame that said, should the Quran be banned for hate speech? Yes. Which I know it should be, but I'm putting the question out there, with the question mark. Should it be? I want to hear what you think, because I want to convince you that yes, it should be. So anyway, she was arguing this point, saying, we're not a Christian country anymore. No, we're not a Christian country. And I said, well, why are we not a Christian country? She said, because we're secular. We have separation of church and state. And I had to explain to her that idea is a Christian idea. And I've actually got a little part of this book. Now this book, it's called The Air We Breathe. Has anyone heard of this book? It's a great book, isn't it? It's so good. I've got so many folded pages in there. And I was listening to a guy named Wes Huff on a podcast, and he mentioned that his friend wrote this book and it talks about our history and our heritage, where things came from, why we had so much innovation in the West. I thought I've got to get that book. So there's a section in here, just give me a minute, I've got to find it, because I've got that organised. What's that?
Have you turned over the corner?
I could probably quote it, but I don't want to misrepresent anything. I'm going to refer to this book a little bit because there's some great nuggets in here. All right, let's go. I actually don't even need to find it because I can pretty much tell you what's in there. But basically, who here knows where the idea of, or the term secular came from with reference to separation of church and state? Does anyone here know?
Yes, secular.
There's a guy in the 4th century, he was born in the 4th century, named St. Augustine, and he wrote a book, which I think he completed in, it took him about 10 years, in 426. It was called City of God. So St. Augustine was an early church father. He was the first to create this idea of the secular, which is the realm of this age, the earthly realm. And was that my daughter running around there? and the godly realm. Like Jesus says, my kingdom's not this world. Jesus said, render to Caesar the things of the Caesars, and to God the things of the gods, which clearly defines the difference between the two. And this was written about in detail extensively in the City of God by this really influential bishop from the 4th and 5th century. And it was not long after the fall of Rome, which is 410, I think, was when Rome collapsed, and this idea of the secular realm, which is that the church shouldn't be removed, but that it shouldn't have control over all the political affairs. It shouldn't have control of that. That has to be separate, and the reason it has to be separate is we need to have choice, the freedom to choose. Here we go. So, Here it is. It says, Rome, a city of man, might fall, but a city of God, expressed in the community of the church, was forever. So St. Augustine, North African bishop, 354 to 430, penned 5 million words of philosophical, theological, legal and other writings, none more influential than his towering city of God. In it, he distinguished between the fragile earthly realm, which he called the secular, and the heavenly kingdom. And then it says that it gave rise to the concept of secular realm. Secular means this age, the contrast with the eternal sacred realm. So by the 11th and 12th centuries, Augustine's concept attained a spectacular bloom. So that's where that comes from. Okay, render to Caesar the things of the Caesars and the God things of the gods. That's the first inception of that idea of this separation. So when people say, "Oh, you know, we're a secular country, we're not Christian, we're not," the reason why all of Christendom is secular is because secular really is a Christian idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So next time somebody says we're not Christian, we've got separation of church and state, you can say to them, well, actually, the reason we have that is because of the early church fathers and because of the Bible, Jesus' own words. All right. Now, Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 is the most, I believe, the most influential Bible verse. Where it says, and God made man in his image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. This idea revolutionized, especially the Roman world at the beginning. Now, if you look at equality, right? So, in the Roman world, or the Greek world, you were just considered to be a plaything for the gods, or for the Caesars, and your status would establish where you are in the hierarchy, or your wealth, or your, like the Roman world was basically just a big military. So if you had military might, or you could command people, or you had a lot of wealth, you came from a wealthy family, you were higher, other people were lower. So there was it was a class of society. Greek world was the same. India has a caste system. They still have a caste system. So you've got your Brahma caste at the top, which is great to be those guys. But you've got the Dalits down the bottom. You know what they call the Dalits? The untouchables, yeah. Yeah, so that's in India. So there's no equality there. Islamic societies, I think I shared the hierarchy before. Muslim men, Muslim women, dhimmi slaves, so people that have been subjugated, and they said, all right, I won't convert, but I'll just pay you a tax. And you better hope that you have money to pay that tax, because if you've got a beautiful daughter, you know what happens in these countries. It does happen. Then below them, you've got your polytheists, and then you've got your people with other, like Hindus, and then below that, you've got the people who are the apostates, who weren't Muslims, who are left, who are fighting against them. Which really fighting against the Muslims just means that you're speaking against it. That's fighting against it. They're so protective of their Muhammad.
What's a polytheist?
Polytheist is someone that believes lots and lots of different gods. That's like the lowest.
So give us an example.
Well, a Hindu would be a polytheist. They believe in lots of gods. The ancient Romans believed in lots of different gods. That's on the hierarchy of the. And I actually had this happen. I went to the fight a couple of months ago, and I was doing commentary. I did fight commentary at fight shows. And there's a couple of guys, there's about 5 or 6 of them, but 2 of them I used to train at my gym. And one of them had just fought, and I commentated his fight. He's a Muslim, but he's staunchly Muslim. And he comes up to me and says, why are you speaking so bad publicly about Muslims? Why do you hate Muslims? And I'm like, mate, I just don't like your religion. And I have to be really blunt with these people, because they don't respect anything else. Okay, and I said, well, you believe I'm an infidel? He said, yeah, which is a bad thing. Okay, he said, yeah, but you're better than the polytheists. I said, yeah, that's not really gelling with me. I don't feel special because you think I'm less than you, but I'm better than somebody else. I just don't like it. Then communist China, you've got obviously the communist society has its own hierarchical system. And if you're not part of the Communist Party, well, that excludes you from about 85% of different job opportunities. And if you're a Christian, you're like the very, very bottom. You spend a lot of your life, if you're outwardly a Christian and proselyting, you'll find yourself in jail. Equality before the law. Now this idea comes directly from the Bible. Okay, so you've got Genesis 1 verse 27, but you've got all through the Bible, you've got this idea of there's no respect of persons with God. Then Peter opened his mouth and said, in truth, I perceive that God shows no partiality. There's loads of verses like this which inspire the people who put together our common law system that we have, which we sort of don't really have anymore. It's still sort of there, but they've done everything they do to corrupt it. But the idea that we're all treated equally in law is the same. It's the same as we should be treated equally in everything. We should be treated equally when it comes to value. Not when it comes to athletic ability or intellect, because we don't have the same amounts of these things. But as far as value, and being treated fairly, we all should be treated equally and fairly. And that's because of the Christian heritage that we have, that people just think is just a given. We should just have that. It's a given. We don't just have something because it works and it's nice. There was actually like 2,000 years of history behind how we ended up having what we have today. It didn't come from nothing. It didn't just come from the desert somewhere. It actually came from blood, sweat and tears, and people literally sacrificing their lives. In fact, does anyone here know the story of how the gladiatorial games ended?
Very badly for a lot of people.
You did. So there was a Christian. I don't know how Christian he was, but he was an emperor called Honorius. So this was in I think it was in 400 and I think the year 400 or 402 was around that time, and he was. This was the last time they ever had the games, and he outlawed it because a guy who was a priest named Telemachus is his name. He went into the arena to stop the bloodshed as a Christian, and he got killed for it. And that affected Honorius, the emperor, to his very core, and that's what outlawed it. Now we still have a version of it. We call it footy, boxing, all the rest of it, but not. People aren't getting killed and fed to the lions anymore because of these great people. That's people who literally died because of the inspiration they had. And in order to know, I'm going to reiterate this, in order to understand our Western heritage, we need to understand it's actually Christian heritage. It should just be called that. We used to be called Christendom, and they changed the name to Western society. It's to sanitize it. It's like, we won't call it Christmas, we'll call it Xmas. That's what I think happened. I think that's why they call it Western culture now, because it is actually Christian, and that's offensive to the smaller demographics. All right, freedom of speech is another Christian idea. Who would have guessed? What does speech do to a man or a woman? What does it give you? Power. That's the greatest power you have, is the power to influence. And it's not just what you speak, it's expression as well. It's more than just your words. The way you conduct yourself, the things that you do. It gives you the ability to oppose governments, to oppose powers, and these ideas come directly from biblical text, which influence people. We've got in Proverbs, open your mouth for those with no voice, defend the cause of the poor and the needy. And then you've got in Matthew chapter 10, what I tell you in darkness, speak you in the light. Preach ye upon the housetops. Shout it from the rooftops is what some of the translations say. And you've got in Acts chapter 5, we ought to obey God rather than men. That was a good one during COVID when people were being told to close the churches down, businesses down, and we knew it was a lie. Right? Who's the father of lies? Well, it's not God. So a lot of people are saying, well, no, I'm going to do what God wants me to do. I'm not going to do what the government tell me to do because I know it's false. I know it's a lie. And then you've got the famous verse from John chapter 8, verse 32, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And the only way you can really know the truth is if people are able to speak it, write it down, and declare it. So freedom of speech You don't have freedom of speech in China. You don't have it in India. They have elements of it, but they don't have it the way that, you know, we have enjoyed it in the Western world. And in the Islamic world, you know, you can't criticise Muhammad, you can't proselytise, which is really interesting. And because I just go on tangents, so I've got this presentation, but we're just going to go wherever it goes. I just thought of this because a guy that I knew, he actually was, him and his wife were doing mission. He went to a number of different countries, and he went to one of the countries, I can't remember which one, but it was one of the sand countries in that section, right? Where it was illegal to preach the gospel. He got arrested, and he told me his story about it, and they ended up letting him go. One of the police wanted to kill him, and the other one said, "Oh no, don't do it." But it was really interesting because I said to him, I said, "Isn't it interesting that the Quran talks, which is the Islamic text, talks about all of these people that are in the Bible, but it tells you nothing about them. And the only way to actually know the stories is actually to read the Bible." I said, that's what I would use as my reasoning for being able to share it. I've asked the question, because it's a logical question. If you guys, are Muslim, how do you know the stories about Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel? Or how do you know the stories? Because you don't get the full picture from the Quran. You get you don't even get the names. You just get a little bit. You actually need the other text. But over there, no, you can't read the Bible. So I think in Iran it's about 24 years. I think 24 years for apostasy is it was at one stage. I think it's even worse now. But I think it's 12 years in prison for having a Bible if you're a Muslim. Because this is what they'll say. When you talk to Muslims, they'll say, "No, I've been to Iran," or "I know people from Iran. There's Christians there. They've always been there." I go, "Yeah, but what about the Muslims? Do they have the freedom to read a Bible?" "Oh, no. It's like, that's right, they don't. Because they don't have those freedoms that we have here." And that's why it's important that we understand this stuff and we understand where it comes from. Because without this knowledge, what's going to happen to our children's children, is they're going to get sucked into the lies as well, because they've got nothing to anchor to. Public servants. Okay, we've got a couple of Bible verses here. This is where this comes from. In Matthew chapter 23. "But he who is greatest among you shall be your servant, and whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and whosoever shall humble himself shall be exalted." That's reiterated a few times in the biblical text. And then in Mark chapter 10, "But it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to be great among you, let him be your servant. Whoever desires to become first, he shall become servant of all. For even the Son of Man," which is Jesus, "did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." So that's where the idea comes from. Now, you can not like Christianity, or you can say, "Oh, I don't like that Christian stuff." Well, this is where it comes from. To get over it, because this is the truth, and you can't know the history of the West if you don't understand this stuff. And it's been removed on purpose. And that's why most people don't know this stuff, especially the younger generation. So Western freedom, built on Christian principles, individual liberty rooted in Christian anthropology, the infinite worth of each person before God. So we're all equal in value. Doesn't matter if you're poor. Now, actually, interesting. I was reading in this book actually about, it's in the compassion section. It's back here. But basically, and I was talking to Ben, and he was telling me that the Romans did something similar. But in this book, it talks about compassion and equality. It says Plato thought that in order to be worth rearing, children must be malleable, disposed to virtue, and physically fit. If they do not prove themselves worthy, parents would properly dispose of them in secret, so that no one will know what has become of them. Aristotle thought defective children should be exposed, that is, discarded at rubbish tips, abandoned in hillsides, thrown down wells, or drowned in rivers. As to exposing or rearing the children born, let there be a law that no deformed child be reared. In other words, it would be immoral to do so. So that's the mindset prior to Christianity. The Romans they had a law that you could leave, if you didn't want to have a child, you couldn't afford to feed them. Or if it was a girl, because girl children, remember, Rome was a big military operation. So if you had a girl, it's going to cost me money to feed her. So what people would do is they would leave them out the front of their house to die. And it wasn't against the law to do that. And it was the Christians who went and saved those children. Or they'd go to rubbish tips as well for discarded children. It's the Christians that did that. And why did they do that? Because God made man in his image. In the image of God made he him, male and female made he them. We all have this, that's what makes us valuable. It's that we're made in the image of God. It doesn't matter how much money we've got. And I shared this last time, let's say I was really wealthy, which I'm not. I'm the complete opposite. I have negative wealth. But let's say that I was really wealthy. And I'm made in God's image. And then my mate Ben over there, he's not wealthy, but made in God's image. Do you know that in the eyes of God, we don't have any difference in our value? Because the wealth actually means nothing to our actual value. And we have that in our society still. People think, well, you're not better than me. What makes him so good? He thinks he's better. She thinks she's better than I am. Where do we get that from? Right? Because if we're in pagan Rome or we're in some of these other societies, well, no, they are better than you. They've got a better family, they've got more money, more intelligent, but we know that that's not true because of our Christian heritage.
So God made man in his image. Where did women come from?
Yeah, man and women are both made in his image.
Mankind.
So the Bible says, now it's not talking about, I don't think, our physical image. It just says that we're made to resemble and to reflect the light of God. Okay, so God is a spirit. But the idea is that we have something divine about us. That's what makes us special. In the Christian world, which revolutionized the pagan Rome and turned it into something very different. And it wasn't because of force, it was because of inspiration. Because people like Telemachus, because the Christians wouldn't go to the games to these where the people were getting slaughtered. They abdicated from that. They don't want to be a part of it, and they became outcasts. Also, women were very inspired at the beginning of the Christian missionary explosion that was happening throughout the Roman Empire. Women were out converting men. Reason being is, imagine you're a woman who's been told you're deficient in mind, which is actually what the Muslims teach. Isn't that right? They teach that a woman's deficient in mind.
Half a brain.
Yeah, that's right. That's actually common in text. So sometimes I just say that, and I'll read that to my wife, and I'll lose my mind. I don't think my wife's here. I think she's out. But anyway, so the women would have known that, because we know now women and men are equal in intelligence, right? We're not the same in every way, but we're equal in intelligence. We just have different things that we focus on.
But in Iran, women make up the majority of doctors and engineers.
Yeah. So imagine.
They're not intelligent.
So imagine you're a woman treated, because women were treated very low in the Roman Empire, but they would have known that they're just not as strong physically, but they're not just as intelligent. And then these Christians came around and they were teaching, you're made in God's image and you're equal with them. We're both made in God's image and we have the same value. That would have resonated so strongly, I think, in these women's minds. And there was a lot more women converting to Christianity than there were men, and that's why we ended up seeing a lot of these women saving babies and all the rest of it. So this is in our history. Once again, a lot of people don't know this stuff, and that's why I'm sharing this. And if you don't agree, that's fine. We can have a chat about it later. I can provide the receipts for you though, if you want. All right, William Wilberforce. Who's heard of this great guy? Okay, so William Wilberforce is from the Clapham sect. He was an amazing Christian man who made it. Actually, I've got a couple of quotes from him that I've taken here. I want to give you an insight into how this man thinks, or how he thought. So a couple of quotes from Wilberforce. God Almighty has set before me two great objects, the suppression of the slave trade and the reformation of morality. Another one. I think I've only got that one. Yeah, that's it. But yeah, so this guy was all about it. He was completely inspired. He went to a church with a guy named John Newton. Who's heard of John Newton? Yeah. Who hasn't heard of John Newton? You've heard of some Amazing Grace? So John Newton was a slave trader and he actually became one of the staunchest advocates for the abolition movement, and he became a pastor, and he was William Wilberforce's pastor, and another guy named Edmund Burke. You know who Edmund Burke is? You probably heard the quote, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. So they were all at the same church, these guys. You think about how powerful that was. So here are some of the scriptures that inspired Wilberforce in the abolishment of slavery. And the reason I've got to share this with you is most people don't know that the British were the ones who abolished slavery. And they did, and it was at our own expense. In Exodus it says, he that steals a man and sells him, or if he is found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. We've got in Acts chapter 17, verse 26, and he, God, has made all nations of men of one blood to dwell on all the face of the earth, ordaining 4 appointed seasons and boundaries for their dwelling. So this verse clearly articulates that God's put different nations in different places, so we can't steal people and take them somewhere else. And then we've got the golden rule, which you all know. Therefore, all things whatsoever you desire that men should do to you, do so to them. For this is the law of the prophets. And that greatly revolutionised and influenced the American abolition movement as well. And it's completely a Christian movement. And you can look at any records, even the most biased against Christianity, still will have to admit that the abolition movement, the slave trade, was all Christian. So the Slave Trade Act of 1807, what this did, and this took about 20 years of petitioning Parliament and lobbying Parliament to get them to abolish the slave trade. And what this did is it made man stealing illegal. So you couldn't continue to steal people and take them to the Caribbean or to other places with the plantations. And he nearly gave up. This is William Wilberforce. He nearly gave up, but he was encouraged by his pastor, John Newton, the guy that wrote Amazing Grace. I'm just saying it like this so that you remember it. Okay? That if you continue with your plight, you'll be successful. And then he was successful. So man stealing was illegal. Now, what about all those slaves who were already in the plantations? What about those guys? Well, we have the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833, and if you ever look through this act, it says that through the act that all the various ways in which the slaves that are already slaves have to be emancipated and even given apprenticeships. So let's say you're a slave, you're working somewhere, and you've lived your whole life in slavery maybe, or a big chunk of your life. Now you have freedom. There's certain freedoms that you have now, and in order for if you continue to work for the slave master, he's not your slave master anymore, and he's going to provide you with money. He's going to provide you with an apprenticeship, so that you have a trade or a skill. This was funded by us, by the British people. And I say us because I know we're separate, but we weren't separate back then. And they took out a loan of £30 million, so 40% of the British GDP, to abolish the slave trade in the whole of the British Empire, except for India, because they had an act that came 10 years later. And you know when that debt was paid off? I think it was 2005 or 2015. And you never knew, did you? Some of you might have known. But it's insane to me that I grew up in a better time, not the greatest time, there's older people here that grew up in a better time. I had never heard about this until my later years. Why do you think that that's the case? Why would they hide this from us? Because it's inspiring. You're not going to hate your culture. Oh, the evil British, I hate the Western power. Well, hang on. You know, yeah, look, we've got blood on our hands. But you know who else has got blood on their hands? Everybody. Every culture, every single one does. But has every other culture abolished slavery? No. Actually, most of them have now. But you know who pushed them to do it?
Yeah.
These guys. We'll do questions just a little bit later.
Okay.
All right. And then we had England. So England had abolished slavery in 1772. So well before. There was a bit of a surge, I think, at this time. That's why they had to have an act. I don't think they needed it prior to that. Scotland was 1778. India had their own act, 1843. Then we have 1865, where at the end of the Civil War. And the Civil War, a lot of people think that the Civil War was all about slavery. It wasn't. That was just one aspect of it, to get support. And I know this because you've got what were they called? You've got the northern states, you've got the Union, down the bottom, the Confederate states down the bottom. So the Confederate states, some of them had already abolished slavery before this war even occurred. So that wasn't what the fight was over. Okay, there's other parts of this. But that was one of the great things that came out of it. And I know a lot of people say, all these wars, they're all controlled and manipulated. Yeah, they probably are, but that doesn't mean good things can't happen out of these manipulated events. Now, here we go. Let's contrast this with the Islamic world. So Libya, 1951. So 180 years after the English had abolished slavery, and I think they have slave markets now. And then people say, yeah, well, Gaddafi was a good leader, and they got rid of him, and now the slavery's back. But getting rid of Gaddafi isn't the reason why slavery is back in Libya. Because if you got rid of our leaders, we're not going to start selling people at the slave markets. It's because of the ideology that the radical people, which is a big percentage of the Islamic world, hold. Their religious book says it's okay. It says it's okay to have slaves, to keep slaves. And I've spoken to a lot of Muslims, I've debated a lot of them in the city, and they always lie to me when I ask them about slavery. And they say, we don't believe in slavery. But then when you press them on it, they have to admit it. And they go, oh, yes. And then they make justifications for it. Yes, but in those days it was different. Or what about the sex slave women? They needed someone to take care of them. That's their justification. I had this one guy saying, you can't give charity for that long. I think, Ben, you said, that's called charity. The orphans and the widows, we give charity to them. He said, it's only so long you can give charity for. That's what he said to us. Here we go, Saudi Arabia and Yemen. So the reason Saudi Arabia abolished slavery, does anyone know why? So they were there was a bit of a proxy war at the time in 1962. It was called the North Yemen War, and you had the royal class, who were the Saudis and the royal class, and then you had the socialists from Egypt, and they were in this proxy war. Now the Saudis wanted the support of the Americans, so I think it was Kennedy, and then it was Nixon, said that the only way that we'll continue to give you support, military support, is if you abolish slavery and to reform your country. That's why they abolished slavery, which is 190 years after the England actually abolished slavery. So there you go. UAE. People talk about how great the UAE is. wasn't that good 1960, 62, was it? There was slaves being sold. I heard a podcast the other day, and there was someone talking about how Malcolm X went over to meet up with these Saudis in the 50s, Saudi princes, and to see how great the religion of Islam was, and they were actively selling and trading people in the streets back then. Oman, 1970, so 200 years after England abolished slavery, and this is all because Western powers wouldn't engage with them in commerce. There was a number. You can actually look this up. There's a number of agreements that were made between the British and a number of the Islamic countries that they would not engage with them in commerce and buy all the trade with them unless they abolished slavery. And that's why the Middle East, for the most part, has abolished slavery on paper, but not in reality, because it does happen. I had some figures but I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm usually pretty good at that sort of stuff. But there is huge numbers of people that are still in modern slavery now in the Middle East, and it's not even hidden. And we've got Mauritania, who was the last to abolish slavery, but it still goes on. There's plenty of videos coming out of this country, and they've only just recently made it like a criminal offence. So why did the Islamic countries take so long to abolish slavery? Because Islam does not prohibit it; it regulates it. It's part of their doctrine. So we've got these people coming over here, all these Muslims, and a lot of them will be really nice to you. They'll be friendly, but if they hold to their religion, whether they even like it or not, they will bow the knee to these ideas. They won't fight against them, because they'll be fighting against their community. And that's why you see in the Islamic world, the leaders are always really powerful, ruthless tyrants, because they have to be. If they're not, that 10% of extremist jihadis will get the people to, they'll incite them to kill the leader. So they've got to rule with an iron fist. They were never liberated by the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's the point. In the West, we could all point to the Bible and say the Bible doesn't allow for this. Now, there are Bible verses that talk about slavery, this, that, and the other, but slavery as a word, we think of slavery as like the transatlantic slave trade, or people being stolen and taken somewhere else. The word slave, if you ever see it in the Bible, because some translations use the word slave, not servant, it's one word, it's called eved. And it means everything from servant to a slave. So if you know the story of Jacob, who he worked for 7 years for his wife, it's the same word eved as it is when you read about the Israelites that were in slavery in Egypt. It's the same word. Okay, so it's a word that had a bigger meaning, but we have two different words. We have slave and servant. We separate the two. They had one word, and usually there was like an adjective attached to it, like harsh servitude was like slavery, or brutal servitude, and then there was just servitude, which could be, I'll be a slave, meaning I'll go and work for you for money. That was actually part of that word.
What was the word?
Eved.
It's Eved.
Eved. Oh, that's my Jewish cousin. Eved. Well, I didn't learn from a Jewish person. I learned from a book. I had to read it. Spent 3 years doing biblical Hebrew, and this is what she does to me. Who invited you, Karen? So anyway, so the biblical text, which was so influential in our society, is why the Western world was the first one to abolish slavery, because we could look to our text and say, no, we can't have this. You think of, I think it's Galatians chapter that's one, but there's Galatians, I think chapter 3, verse 27, it says there's neither slave nor free, there's neither male or female, all are one in Christ Jesus. We've got here, Galatians chapter 5, verse 1, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again with the yoke of slavery. See, these ideas influence people, political people that had power, And we've got a 2,000-year history of changes that have been positive and good. Not everyone's been positive and good, but the ones that have been, we can all attribute to this text. And by learning the biblical text and learning all of this history, it actually makes it really easy to remember all of this stuff. Therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, because through Christ Jesus, the law of the Spirit who gives life, has set you free from the law of sin and death. Now, the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. So that's why the West is different. Now you can say, "Oh, I don't believe that. I think we were just, we had better, a better situation." It's not. It's really not. You can see the countries that hold to certain ideologies don't have the freedom, and the countries that hold to different ideologies do. And we can see the difference now in our societies. We've stepped away from the church, we've stepped away from our heritage, and now we have all of these lost people that have no idea what their identity really is. The identity crisis. Yep, so individual rights and dignity, rule of law and justice systems, free speech and conscience, education and literacy, care for the poor and the vulnerable, all rooted in Christian teaching. Alright, so Martin Luther's 95 Theses, the Protestant movement. What does the word Protestant have in it? Protest. Yeah. And it's interesting, because this is one of the biggest, probably most influential protests that ever happened, and one of the earliest ones. This is what that's become now. So it originally was a Christian idea, and that was what it was influenced by. And now it's we're protesting to kill our babies. You see what's happening? And this is because people don't really, a lot of these people, if they knew the history of where all of this comes from, they'd probably have a different mindset, a different view. They wouldn't be as easily manipulated. But when you don't know who you are, and this has all been removed from you, the history, and the foundation, the whole thing collapses. So they want to use a Christian right that was afforded to them through Christianity to kill babies. Or that we've got equality now. Well, you already had equality. And now we don't have it. We've got a real classes system because of this. So this is just confusion. This is where we are now. We're in a time where they just don't know who they are. Some of them don't even know if they're human. Multi-gendered fairy. One of them might be a lizard. Alien. Alright. So here's some Bible verses. Now I'm not preaching to anyone, I'm just sharing principles because this is, in order to understand our Western Christian heritage, you've got to understand the biblical text that underpins it all. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Right? So therein is the reason why our children don't learn this stuff in the schools. That's the reason why. And you can see it. If you can go, "Well, I don't agree with that," well, just look with your eyes. Blind Freddie can see.
Where do you think this influence is coming from? That
We'll talk about it in a minute. I'm almost finished, so I'll get through this. Okay. To whom much is given, much will be required. So we've been given a lot. I think in the West, in Christendom, we've been given a huge amount. And, there's a lot required of us because of that. So there's obligations that we have that others don't. But now what's happened is they've removed the foundation, and now we have what's called suicidal empathy. And then we've got contend earnestly for the faith. This is not just the faith, it's the history. It's our values. It's our principles. Because that's what it is. It's the same thing. You can read this and say contend earnestly for the values which was once for all handed down to the saints. Alright? This is why we have, Ben and I have such a desire to get out and share this information. And if anyone knows any schools or homeschool programs, we can do a much simpler version of this with kids so that they can remember all of this stuff. Alright, so that's not our culture, is it?
no.
Is that equality?
No.
But I tell you what, those people with those rainbow flags, the list of people, would be saying equality now for these people, and siding with these people. So this is not our culture, and we need to identify that it's not, and we need to re-anchor to who we really are and realise that we're a Christian nation. That's not our culture. That's a show of force. It's a show of dominance. That's saying we're the new guys, and they're doing exactly what the Muslims did in the early days when they would. This is how it starts. They start with this. Look at how many men we can assemble together, and a lot of these guys will literally die for the stupidest stuff. I will die to defend my Muhammad's right to marry 6-year-olds. Yeah, that's a real thing.
They just want 72 version.
That's not our culture. You've got Muslim people. You've got protesting against, and I think this was from a protest that was an anti-colony. That's what it shows there. I think when I looked it up, it was like an anti-colony. I think that's just all part of it, but it was actually an anti-colonisation one, and so was the next one as well. And the only reason that the people have the right to protest is because of the exact thing they're protesting against, and that's the hypocrisy of it. So, my call to action is that we contend for the faith, we know our heritage, we teach the next generation to defend their Christian values without any apology, actually being bold as lions. We actually have it on our t-shirt, the righteous is as bold as a lion. This idea that we should be nice, it's rubbish. We're not meant to be nice. Nice is not a virtue, kind is a virtue. The word nice, you know what the etymology of the word means? It means to be weak and foolish. And by being nice to everyone, I'll tell you, people who come from a culture that is all about force and brutality only respect force and brutality. So you need to be strong with these people. Speak up when our values and principles are under attack. Protect the freedoms that we've been given. And part of that is know what they are, know where they come from, and then you can contend earnestly for the faith, or not even like religiously. This is what our values are, and they're Christian values, and we contend for it, we defend it, because our inheritance depends on it. Now, I want to just share this from this book. It's the book's called The Air We Breathe, and there's a really good. I'll finish with this. There's a really good it's an analogy in there, and give me a sec. I'm just going to find it. Maybe it's there. Oh, here we go. Goldfish don't see water. Goldfish see what's in the water. They see what's refracted through the water. But I assume, I haven't done the proper investigations, that goldfish don't see the water itself. And yet, there it is. It's their environment, universal but invisible. It shapes everything they do and everything they see, but they don't see it. Here's the contention of this book. If you're a Westerner, whether you've stepped foot inside a church or not, whether you've clapped eyes on the Bible or not, whether you consider yourself an atheist, pagan, Jedi Knight, you are a goldfish, and Christianity is the water which you swim. Or to say it in the same thing in a slightly different way, Christianity is the air we breathe. It's our atmosphere, it's our environment, both unseen and all pervasive. And in the tradition of a spiritual teacher, truth be told, I'm an Anglican clergyman, so this should fit. So this guy that wrote this was an Anglican clergyman. I'm going to ask you to focus on your breathing. This is a technique common to many of a great religious tradition. So the idea here is that we have inherited all of this freedom, all of these rights, and we just assume they're just a given. It's the air we breathe, or it's the water that we swim through, or a goldfish. But we don't realise it's Christianity. That's what it is. And the reason why every other subgroup is taking so much from us, it's because we don't even know what we're anchored to anymore. Because we've lost our connection to the good book and to our history and to all of those beautiful principles that our forefathers and ancestors fought and died for. So my encouragement is that you remember this. We've got some, I think we've got some sheets we're going to give out to people as well. It's got key dates and names, and it's basically a summary of what I've shared. And I want you guys to do your part to learn this stuff. You don't have to learn it in depth, but to just know it in substance. Even if you don't know the dates, but if you know it well enough that you can, the better you learn this stuff, the more power you've got to argue and articulate an idea to break down those strongholds that are set up by this communist government and the Muslims that they're trying to get to take over. Because already now, I think I was talking to one of my mates who was saying that in Dandenong, the member for Dandenong, Dandenong was an Islamic stronghold, their member has confirmed that if this particular member gets voted back in, that they'll allow the Muslims to practice Sharia law.
No way.
And that's just following the same pattern that we see. So Sharia law, for those who don't know, is Islamic law. And so you've got, and once you get that in your country, now you've got people who subscribe to a different religion and a different legal system, and they know within themselves that this is our jihad. That's what they're doing here. And we're not, I don't think we're ready to fight these battles. I'm not talking about the physical fighting, but that is a thing, that is a real thing. But just the arguments, just winning people over. If we don't know this stuff, how are we going to do it? Anyway, that's our presentation. I hope you got something out of it. Thanks for sharing your time with us and being here with us. Now, is there any questions anyone has?
What did the old goldfish say to the young goldfish?
What did the old goldfish say to the young goldfish?
How's the water?
How's the water?
And what did the young goldfish say?
What did the young goldfish say back to him?
What's water?
What's water? There you go. Yep. Yeah, it's good. I like that. Yep.
Yeah. In regards to Islam being dominating the West, a few weeks ago, a bunch of Muslims surrounded the St. Patrick Cathedral, and the person that came out said something about interfaith dialogue. But how come you don't see it the other way around when Christians, how come you don't see Christians surrounding mosque? And my second question when it came to slavery was, everyone knows about the evils of the transatlantic slave trade, but how come nobody talks about the evils of the trans-Saharan slave trade, which is longer, about 1,300 years?
Because they don't know it, that's why. That's why we went through this presentation today. We're just going to get this out there to more and more people so they know it. But yeah, so what you said first about why don't we circle around the mosque, well, I'll tell you why. Because we're not conquering them, they're conquering us. That's what they do. They've come over here to conquer us. It's all about show of force. Like St. Patrick's Cathedral is the largest Christian monument in our country. They didn't circle around it, just because they just happened to do that by accident. They faced the cathedral, started beating their chests like this, and then they say a martyrdom chant to commit their footsteps to follow Imam Hussein, the first martyr in Islam. That's what they were doing.
So what if we sit
Did congregate around there?
Well, it was just
police would get you.
yeah. So
Arrested.
yeah, the police. I mean,
So we'd get arrested. They
Yeah,
don't.
you will be
no,
arrested.
because we've got cowards in our churches, running a lot of these churches, and we've got people that are basically working for the enemy within the churches who are allowing them to do that. So essentially, what they're doing. So, these people who are doing this, they're the enemy of the Western society, and what the Catholic
Archbishop.
Was it the Archbishop, wasn't he?
Archbishop.
Yeah. So what he's done is he's allowed
Yeah.
those people to do that show of force, that's all it is. Yeah, sure, you can do that. Yep, no worries.
You should skip around them.
And all it is, it's just to show we're the tough guys, we're here, and we're not leaving. That's all it is.
Two things, just one, didn't I hear that the Archbishop has allowed a room for the Muslim call to prayer?
Yep,
In the church?
in the church, yeah.
So that's corruption.
There's a Bible verse that we all would have known. Probably you guys won't know it. Don't give that which is holy to the dogs. Yeah, that's right. And that's exactly what he's done.
The other thing, Nick, I heard you speak once and you quoted after quote after quote after quote everyday sayings that we just say that are actual biblical texts.
Oh yeah, everyone here would know
Eye
at
for
least
eye.
200 to 400 Bible verses and not even know they're Bible verses.
Yeah. Can you give us a couple of examples for people to know that it comes from?
Yeah, I'll find some. Yeah.
An eye for an eye.
That's heaps of them. I've got a really good list here.
He's really good at
Turn the other
quoting
cheek.
these straight out. You're going to pretend to look them up.
No, I'm gonna go. Any other questions?
Little birdie told me.
Little birdie told me.
What was John Newton's comment to William Wilberforce?
Yeah. Yeah, he basically said if you continue with your flight, you'll be successful. Because he wanted to give up. He was, and I'm glad that he did continue, because if he didn't continue, where would we be now? The slave trade would still continue. I got a list here. Tell me if you've heard any of these. All right, and someone said this one before. A little birdie told me. A house divided, a heavy heart, a man after my own heart, stone's throw, act the fall, an eye for an eye, apple of my eye, orphanship's clothing, ashes to ashes, at my wit's end, at the 11th hour, be strong, which is all through the Bible. That is all through there, right? Become all things to all people, bite the dust, blind leading the blind, bottomless pit, bright as the sun, broken heart, by the skin of his teeth, can a leopard change its spots, catch my breath, chariots of fire, which I just thought was just a movie. Chariots of fire, corners of the earth, count the cost, cross to bear, broken spirit, crystal clear. I always say to my children, I go off to them and I say, let me get this crystal clear. Daily bread, days of old, dead sleep, den of thieves, deep sleep, den of thieves, heart's desire, unequally yoked. The golden rule, do unto others as you have them do unto you. Do not cast your pearls before swine. Doubting Thomas, dust of the earth, drop in a bucket, eat, drink, and be merry, eat sour grapes, empty-handed, enter the earth, fall from grace, fall by the wayside, pray the land, fight the good fight, everything in its season, for generations to come, for such a time as this, from strength to strength, fuel the fire, forbidden fruit, bring into season the things of the seasons, God forbid, go the extra mile, golden calf, good Samaritan, guilty conscience, cast the first stone, he who lives by the sword dies by the sword, you reap what you sow, head on a platter, fire and brimstone, high heaven, hard heart, holier than thou, how the mighty have fallen, innocent blood, iron sharpens iron, itching ears, Jacob's ladder, labour of love, to be a Judas, land of the slaughter, law unto themselves, let there be light, letter of the law, light of day, like a thief in the night, like the sand of the sea, like the stars in the sky, love thy neighbour. Anyway, there's loads. Like I've got a massive list, it's not even half. And that's only like a quarter of what's on the actual website as sayings that are Bible verses. So anyone that thinks that you don't know the Bible, you actually know heaps of it and don't even know that it's biblical. Yep.
Just a quick one on Wilberforce, or whatever his name is. He also helped with the stop of animal cruelty because he felt that it was a failing of morality.
That's true.
There you go.
Especially
Yep.
horses.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because there was a lot of dog fighting and things that was happening.
The way horses were being treated, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And then there's the movie, if you want to mention, Amazing Grace. It's
Yeah,
good.
Amazing Grace movie. I haven't watched it yet.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
It shows that very clearly.
Yeah.
The struggle he had. He fought against the slave trade for so many years.
Yeah.
15.
Beautiful.
15, yeah.
How do we argue the Islamic dilemma?
Oh, the Islamic. Oh, I think that.
Problem you have with the Islamic dilemma is
You want to explain
So-
what the Islamic dilemma is?
So the Islamic dilemma is the Quran tells people to go back to the people of the book. It says, go to the people of the book if you have any doubts, right? There was a particular time when Muhammad was sitting there and the Jews couldn't judge on a particular thing. They basically had to stone the person. And he said, why are you coming to me? Right? And he grabbed that book, put it between his hands, he put it under his pillow and he said, I believe in thee and he who sent thee, or whatever, something like that. The problem that you have is when you go to Muslims and you face them with this, it's quite unfortunate for them because they just keep saying the same thing that they hear. That, oh, well, back then they had the right Injil, right? Now they don't have it, the right gospel, you know? So the Injil, which is the New Testament and the Torah. The problem that you have is, obviously Muhammad had the right one at that time, whatever he was holding. You know, we have the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have so much proof, but they refuse to accept it.
So can I just jump in there? Yeah, so like you're saying, so the Islamic dilemma, to sum it up, it really simply is that the Quran says that you can refer to the biblical text, but then now because the biblical text is totally different to their text, they say, well, they have to make up this lie that the Bible's corrupted. But the biblical text doesn't. The Quran doesn't say that it's corrupted. It doesn't say that. It says it's got something in there that they kind of strain at, but they have to. So that's their dilemma that they have. But what I find is when you talk to them about that, you raise the Islamic dilemma. So your book says that our scripture's good, but it contradicts yours. Then you find out very quickly that nearly all Muslims aren't interested in the truth. Because the truth says one thing, but they just reject it because, well, I'm only going to believe what I'm comfortable with.
For me personally, I think the greatest proof against Islam is Muhammad's life. There's just nothing better. I was in an Uber a couple of weeks ago, and I was speaking to the guy, and I said to him, look, brother, I love you. I'm just telling you because I love you, man. Please look at the difference between Muhammad and Jesus. And there's just, believe me, Jesus is perfect. Even the Quran says, even that fake Jesus in the Quran is better than Muhammad. And he took it well. He took it well, and he said, look, I'll look into it because there was a lot of things he didn't understand. But I remember saying it to another Muslim, and I said, look, man, your Muhammad tried to kill himself and whatever. No, he didn't. When I got out of the Uber, 5 minutes later, I was banned from taking an Uber for a month. he didn't like me saying that to him. So the best example is, for me personally, is comparing Jesus with Muhammad. The Islamic dilemma, you're not going to get anywhere. They're so disingenuous, man. And if you get an honest Muslim, he's not going to be a Muslim for long. He'll become a Christian.
Now we'll probably just have one more. We'll do one more, and then after that we'll just yeah, we will. Don't worry. So we'll make this last question, and then we'll end it there. If anyone wants to buy a T-shirt, we've got T-shirts at the back, and I need to promote our YouTube channel. So we'll probably upload this. We've got a few cameras going to our YouTube channel, which is called the Christian Warrior Project. So if you go on YouTube, have a look. If you've got a YouTube channel, you can like subscribe to our channel, and if you can, if you haven't bought a drink yet or anything, our friend Simone, she's been so good to us, letting us use this amazing space.
Kitchen's open until 9:30 then.
All right. And hang around and have a chat, guys. Yep.
So about 15 or so years ago, I read a book by a woman who had been born into and grew up in a Muslim family. And she had rejected Islam and become a target and was ostracized from her family. And lived in Canada, I think she's still there, became very successful in her field. And she wrote, now the reason I'm saying this is because I want to ask you about what she wrote. She wrote that the word for virgin particularly the word virgin that pertains to the Islamic 72 virgins that a man will receive in heaven, is the same word as white raisin. So I'm just wondering if that's the same word.
You have that one, mate.
What she suggested was that all these men who think that they're going to have 72 virgins when they reach heaven, they're actually going to get 72 white raisins.
Yeah.
Is that true? Is it the same word?
I know. You know what my grandma says? It's bloke can take his hat off and put it back on. But I know there are hadiths that specifically say that out of the 72 virgins, 2 of them will be specifically smoothed. They'll have smooth skin that Allah will take 1,000 years to smooth their skin. I know it sounds crazy. I know.
That's important.
And how do they know that?
I don't know if you guys noticed when he was going through the Islamic yeah, I don't know about the raisins, but when he, has anyone here read the Quran? It's the most awful book to read. It's just all over the place. So you go through it again and again and go, what is it saying? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. And that's a big problem, I think, because there's all these different interpretations, because it doesn't read clearly and it doesn't interpret itself. But
To be fair, you can say the same about the Bible.
No.
You can string whatever argument you like out of it.
You know what I say? What I say is the worst thing you can do. Hello? Okay, what I say is the worst thing you can do when you read the Bible is, when you read the Bible without the Holy Spirit, it's toxic. You can make the worst person out of a person that reads the Bible without the Holy Spirit. You're meant to read it in the light of the Holy Spirit. You can formulate murder out of it.
The devil knows the book.
Yes, 100%.
So I should have words with the RE teacher at Melbourne Grammar then.
Yeah. What's that? I don't know what that means.
Religious education.
Oh, okay, yeah.
With the Holy Spirit. Have words with him.
Yeah.
anyway, let's end it there.
Jesus said, I must go so that the help will come and he'll lead you into all truth.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if we're open to him, we're open to the one thing that I love more than anything else. If you really love the truth, you'll appear like a madman to the world. You look like a fool to the world. I'd rather be a fool to the world and be obedient to Jesus.
Amen.
Amen. Patrick, there it is. Thanks, guys. Thanks for everything. Get something to drink, and hopefully you get to say hi or bye.